Hello, my name is Sarah Huggett. I'm the Head of Analytical Services for Asia Pacific at Elsevier. I lead a team providing consultative services around research performance and evaluation to governments, funding bodies, policymakers, and research-intensive institutes. Today, I'd like to share with you insights from a report called The Researcher Journey Through a Gender Lens on behalf of the project team. By way of an introduction, let me share with you a few of the items that Elsevier undertakes in the gender realm. So first of all, I'd like to talk to you about our gender working group. We created it about 3 years ago, and it's an organic group across different business units and work streams that looks at fostering gender balance and equality both internally and externally. So what this includes is increased gender inclusion, diversity, and equality efforts internally at Elsevier across our systems and processes, greater gender diversity for our journal editorial boards, speakers, panelists at conferences, and award selection committees, and addressing issues of implicit bias in peer review. We also support enhanced reporting on sex and gender dimension of research and promote studies on related topics. Finally, we apply analytics to gender issues to support an evidence base. Here are some examples of some of the activities that we've undertaken over the years. So at the top left, you see the activity from the Elsevier Foundation, in particular, the support of the International Gender Summits via presentations such as this one. On the top right-hand corner, you can see Elsevier and RELX's commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality, as well as the Global Research Council Statement of Principles and Action promoting the equality and status of women in research. At the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that our journals are publishing many special issues and special articles related to the issue. And finally, at the top right-hand corner, what we are doing in terms of committing to gender diversity in the scientific publishing industry. So one thing that our team has been involved in over the years are the analytics reports. And you see that over the years, we've done 4, including, in addition, the most recent SHE figures from the European Commission. So all of these reports draw upon Elsevier's comprehensive and stringent data sources, notably Scopus, as well as our deep analytics expertise. We also use expert input to provide further insights on the evidence-based data that we publish. The latest report is called The Researcher Journey Through a Gender Lens. You can see it at the top right-hand corner. And it's providing an examination of the research landscape, looking at gender participation, research footprint, as well as research perception. So without further ado, let's look at research participation, which means the proportion of men and women among researchers. So first of all, the good news is that when we conducted a survey of active researchers, 61% felt that there were more women in research now compared to 10 years ago. So let's see what the data says. So in this chart, we're looking at authors that are active, meaning having published, in 2 different 5-year time periods. The first one, 1999 to 2003, is denoted by the squares, and the second one, 2014 to 2018, is denoted by the circle. The horizontal line at 100 indicates parity, meaning 100 men for 100 women. Above the line in green mean more women than men. Under the line in blue mean more men than women. what we can see first is that for all of the countries, there has been progress in terms of getting closer to parity through the numbers of men per women researchers. So that has increased for all of the countries. However, what we also see is that there are disparities among different countries, with some countries being closer to parity. Argentina, for instance, has in fact even more women than men among researchers. At the other end of the spectrum, we see that Japan has the lowest proportion of women per 100 men among researchers. If we look at the rate of increase, we see that there are ranges as well. And while Japan's increase may seem small in absolute numbers, in terms of percentage of increase, it's actually quite similar to other data we see for the US or the UK. So then we also examined not only the ratio of women among authors, but also how that compares to awardees. And the awardees are the orange dots on the left. And we compare that to different classes of authors. For example, first authors in purple, corresponding authors in blue, and last authors in pink. And what we found is that amongst grant awardees, the proportion of men per women was similar to that of last authors or corresponding authors. What was striking was looking at women per 100 men among patent applicants. And we saw the same for applicants and assignees, which was that there are few women per 100 men, and there is very little change between the two periods measured as well. So moving on beyond research participation to look at the research footprint that these researchers have. So first, we examined the average number of publications per man compared to the average number of publications per women. And we saw that on average, women tend to publish less. There is, however, quite some difference between countries, with Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico being closest to parity, and Denmark, Japan, and Portugal being the furthest from parity. We also looked at the citation impact of researchers. Now, to do this, we used a field-weighted citation impact, which is a measure of average number of citations per paper, normalized to account for differences in citation per field, per article type, as well as per article age. What we found was that when we looked at all authors together, women researchers have similar citation impact to men. However, when we looked at first author researchers and their first author publication, we see that for most countries, there is a small difference, which seems to suggest that women are cited less than men. We also found that they tend to receive fewer grants than men. And also that men tend to apply for more patents than women do. So moving on from looking at the researcher's footprint to looking at publishing careers and mobility, meaning examining the data through time and space. To do this, we examined first a cohort of researchers that published their first publication in 2010 and looked at how they published through time until 2018. So to count a researcher as an active researcher, we count as whether they have published in subsequent years as well. And that allows us to inform the gender ratio over time. And when we follow that same cohort of researcher, we see that there seems to be evidence that women are exiting the world of research at a higher rate than men. Basically, we see that they cease to publish at a slightly higher rate than men do. Shifting gears from time to space, we also looked at researcher mobility. And in this chart, represent the percentage of men and women that publish internationally. And what we see is that for all countries, there is a consistently higher proportion of men that publish outside of their country of origin than women, which suggests that there is greater mobility, international mobility, for men than for women. Now, this is interesting because international research mobility has been associated, for example, with greater citation output, with greater publication output, greater citation impact, etc., etc. In the last section of the report, we look at perceptions about gender. And this slide shows some differences in terms of opinions about the role of gender in academia. This presents the answer to the question, women have to work harder than men to achieve as much. And what we see is that across all of the fields that we examined, women tended to agree more, while men tended to be more neutral. When we asked how important it is to have gender diversity in the research workplace, we also found some differences of opinion. In particular, we found that there was a much higher proportion of women, at about 65%, that thought it was extremely important, but much lower proportion of men. Conversely, there was a higher proportion of men that felt it was not important at all. So, what conclusions can we draw from our reports? First of all, our report shows that there is progress in increasing women's representation in research to some extent across all of the countries that we measured. However, what we see is that diversity and inclusion for women is still lacking in many respects. Our report uncovers opportunities for accelerated change. For example, opportunity to increase the representation of women in physical sciences and across geographies, as well as among grantees and patent applicants. We see that there could be opportunity for support for increasing grant awards and patents to women and facilitating international mobility. We also see that there could be greater opportunity to retain women in research over the length of their career and facilitate international collaboration. Finally, our interviews reveal that there is opportunity for more effective communication about the value of gender equity in research to address various perspectives. This concludes my presentation of insights of our reports on the researcher journey through a gender lens. The reports, the data are freely available online, and I hope that this presentation and the insights I've been sharing will spark further discussion on these important issues. Thank you.